Have you ever laughed at a political joke and then suddenly felt uncomfortable because it sounded a little too true? Have you ever caught yourself judging someone in public life, only to realize the same impulse exists quietly inside you? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are stepping into a story that begins with comedy and ends with a mirror. On the surface, it is a comedian saying something surprising, that he can relate with President Trump, but underneath, it is not really about one politician. It is about the human mind, the hunger to be seen, the fear of losing control, the attachment to identity, and the way ego can turn every moment into a battlefield. The main point is simple but sharp. If you can relate, even a little, you stop being trapped by hatred. And when you stop being trapped by hatred, wisdom becomes possible. The second point is equally important. Relating does not mean agreeing. Relating means recognizing the shared human mechanisms that create suffering, so you can step out of the cycle instead of feeding it. Now let us walk through this as a story, because stories go deeper than arguments. There was a young man named Jonah. He was not famous, not yet. He was the kind of person who watched late-night clips on his phone after work, half amused, half tired, half hungry for something that felt real. Jonah lived in a world where politics was everywhere. Even when you did not ask for it. People argued at dinner. People posted opinions like daggers. People turned every headline into a reason to hate someone they would never meet. Jonah told himself he was not political, but his body reacted anyway. Tight shoulders, fast heartbeat, a tired mind that could not stop scrolling. He would see a clip of a leader, a commentator, a crowd, a chant, and his mind would instantly pick a side. Then it would pick an enemy. Then it would pick a story. That is the nature of the untrained mind. It wants certainty. It wants a simple villain. It wants to feel righteous, because righteousness feels like safety. One night Jonah watched a short comedy clip. The comedian said he could relate with President Trump. Jonah expected the punchline to be pure insult. But the line landed differently. It was not about praising. It was about recognizing something human. Jonah laughed, then paused, then frowned. He felt two emotions collide inside him: amusement and resistance. Part of him wanted to enjoy the joke. Part of him felt offended by the idea of relating at all. Jonah thought, why would I relate to that man? Jonah felt the reflex to protect his identity. And right there, in that reflex, the teaching began. The teaching was not about Trump. The teaching was about Jonah. Because the mind does not only choose political sides. The mind chooses self-images. I am the good one. I am the smart one. I would never be like that. I am above that. And once the mind clings to an image, it becomes defensive. It becomes reactive. It becomes blind. That blindness is what creates suffering. Jonah kept watching. The comedian kept talking. The comedian described something basic: the desire to be respected, the desire to be admired, the desire to never look weak, the desire to win the room, the desire to control the narrative. Jonah recognized that desire in himself, not in big public ways, but in small private ways. When Jonah posted something online and did not get likes, he felt irritated. When Jonah told a story and someone interrupted, he felt the sting of being unseen. When Jonah made a mistake at work, he wanted to explain it fast so nobody thought less of him. When Jonah argued with his brother, Jonah wanted the last word. When Jonah felt criticized, Jonah sometimes attacked back, not with fists, but with sarcasm, silence, or coldness. Jonah had never called those things ego. He called them normal. He called them personality. He called them justified reactions. But the clip cracked something open. It suggested that the public theater of politics is often the private theater of the mind, amplified. Big stages magnify small impulses. Power magnifies insecurity. Applause magnifies craving. Criticism magnifies fear. Jonah did not want to admit this, because admitting it meant he could not keep his comfortable story of being different. The mind loves difference when difference protects superiority. But wisdom loves truth, even when truth is humbling. Jonah sat back on his couch and felt a strange question rise. If I can relate to the mechanism, can I stop being controlled by the emotion? That question was the doorway. Because in Buddhist practice, the enemy is not a person. The enemy is ignorance, the inability to see clearly. The enemy is clinging, the mind gripping identity like a weapon. The enemy is aversion, the mind pushing away discomfort and calling it moral purity. When you see these forces, you stop feeding them. Relating is not agreement. Relating is clarity. Clarity is liberation. Now we go deeper into Jonah's story, because this is where it becomes real. A few days later, Jonah was at lunch with co-workers. Someone brought up politics. The room changed instantly, like a switch flipped. Voices sharpened. Jokes became insults. People tried to prove they were the smartest one at the table. Jonah felt himself tensing, ready to join the dance. He had done this many times. He would pick a side and fight with words. He would leave feeling energized for a moment, then hollow. The arguments never changed anyone. They only hardened identities. This time Jonah tried something different. Not because he became enlightened overnight, but because he remembered the uncomfortable laughter from that clip. He listened. As he listened, he did not only hear opinion, he heard emotions underneath opinion. He heard fear. He heard pride. He heard exhaustion. He heard people wanting certainty in a world that kept changing. He noticed his own mind wanting to dominate, wanting to win, wanting to perform intelligence. That is ego too, even when the content sounds noble. Jonah took a breath. He asked a simple question that surprised everyone. He asked, "What do you think people are afraid of right now?" The table got quieter. Some people still answered with ideology, but a few answered with something human. Losing jobs, feeling ignored, feeling unsafe, feeling like the future is unstable, feeling like nobody listens. Jonah felt something soften in his chest, because the moment you touch the human layer, hatred loses some of its fuel. Not all of it, but enough to create space. Space is where wisdom lies. Later that day, Jonah walked home and kept thinking about the phrase, "I can relate." Why did that phrase bother him so much? Because it threatened the wall between him and the people he judged. And that wall, Jonah realized, was not protecting him. It was imprisoning him. When you cannot relate, you cannot learn. When you cannot relate, you cannot understand your own shadow. When you cannot relate, you turn the world into enemies. And a mind full of enemies is a mind without peace. Jonah started noticing a pattern. Every time he hated someone in public life, he was often hating a trait that existed in him but in a smaller form. Not the exact actions, not the same consequences, but the seed. This is how projection works. The mind throws its disowned parts outward and then attacks them. It feels good for a moment because it creates the illusion of purity, but it keeps you unconscious. And unconsciousness is suffering. So Jonah began practicing a different way of watching politics. Not a naive way, not a passive way, a mindful way. Whenever he felt triggered by a leader, he asked himself 3 questions. What emotion is rising in me? What story is my mind telling? What part of me is being threatened? Sometimes the threatened part was his identity as a good person. Sometimes it was his fear that the world is unstable. Sometimes it was his desire to be on the right side of history. Sometimes it was his craving to feel superior. Jonah realized something uncomfortable. Even moral language can be used by ego. Ego will borrow any costume. It can borrow righteousness. It can borrow compassion. It can borrow activism. It can borrow spirituality. It can borrow humor. Ego will do anything to avoid humility. So Jonah started practicing humility. Not the fake kind that says I am nothing, but the real kind that says I am human and I have seeds of greed, seeds of anger, seeds of ignorance, and I want to see them so they do not rule me. This is where karma becomes practical. Karma is not only what you do with your hands. Karma is what you rehearse in your mind. If you rehearse contempt daily, you train your mind to live in contempt. If you rehearse compassion daily, you train your mind to live in compassion. If you rehearse outrage daily, you train your nervous system to live in adrenaline. Jonah had been rehearsing outrage. He did not call it rehearsal. He called it staying informed. But the body does not care what you call it. The body cares what you feed it. So Jonah made a small vow. He would not watch political content right before sleep. He would not scroll outrage during breakfast. He would not argue online when his chest felt tight. He would practice mindfulness first, then choose response. This was not avoidance. It was training. Training means you can still act, but from clarity instead of compulsion. One night Jonah sat quietly and tried a simple meditation. He focused on breathing. The mind ran wild, as minds do. It showed him clips, arguments, faces, scandals, insults. The mind tried to hook him into narratives. Jonah kept returning to breath. After a few minutes, Jonah noticed something. The mind itself was the theater. Politics was only one script the mind used. The deeper issue was not external. The deeper issue was the mind craving certainty and control. Control is a powerful drug. Many leaders crave control on a grand scale because it soothes their insecurity. Many ordinary people crave control on a small scale because it soothes their insecurity. Different scale, same mechanism. Jonah remembered a moment from his own life. When Jonah was younger, he tried out for a school performance. He practiced hard. He wanted to be chosen. When he did not get the role, he pretended he did not care. But inside he burned. He talked badly about the person who got the role. He called them fake. He called them lucky. He told himself the whole thing was stupid. Jonah had forgotten that memory for years. Now he saw it clearly. He was not only angry at the other person, he was ashamed of his desire to be seen. So he attacked. That is the same pattern that can show up in public life, in institutions, in online battles, in political movements. Desire is denied. Shame is hidden. Anger becomes weapon. When Jonah saw that, he felt compassion, not for bad actions, but for the suffering that drives bad actions. He also felt compassion for himself. He realized he had been trying to be a good person by denying his humanity. But denying humanity does not create goodness. It creates shadow. Shadow then leaks out as cruelty. So Jonah began the real practice. He practiced integrating desire without being owned by it. He admitted to himself, I want to be respected. He admitted, I want to be seen. He admitted, I want to feel like I matter. Then he asked, can I hold these desires without letting them turn into grasping? This is where Buddhist wisdom becomes sharp and useful. Desire is not the problem. Clinging is the problem. The mind can want without being possessed. The mind can act without being addicted. The mind can lead without needing worship. Jonah was not trying to become a saint. He was trying to become free. Now let us shift back to the comedy clip and why it matters. Comedy often reveals truth because it bypasses defenses. When you laugh, your guard drops for a moment. In that moment, insight can enter. That is why humor can be a spiritual tool when used wisely. It can dissolve rigidity. It can expose ego without preaching. It can remind you that your identity is not as solid as you think. Jonah realized the comedian was not asking viewers to praise a politician. The comedian was asking viewers to see the human mechanism. The comedian was inviting a kind of maturity. A maturity that can say, I can recognize the same seed in me, so I will not pretend I am immune. That maturity is powerful because it changes how you respond. If you believe evil lives only out there, you will fight forever and never find peace. If you recognize seeds live in all of us, You will still protect what matters, but you will do it with less hatred and more wisdom. Wisdom does not mean you stop having boundaries. Wisdom means your boundaries are clean. Clean boundaries are not driven by panic. Clean boundaries are guided by values. Values like truth, compassion, responsibility, and patience. Jonah began practicing clean boundaries in his own small life. When a friend tried to pull him into a hateful rant, Jonah did not join. He listened, then said he understood the emotion, but he did not want to dehumanize anyone. At first, the friend mocked him. Jonah felt the old urge to defend himself. He breathed and let the mockery pass. That was practice. Another time, Jonah saw misinformation online. In the past, he would have attacked the person posting it, calling them stupid or evil. This time, he responded differently. He corrected the information calmly, then disengaged. He did not chase validation. That was practice. Another time, Jonah felt the urge to post a sarcastic comment for likes. He paused and asked, "Is this coming from wisdom or from craving attention?" He felt embarrassed. He did not post. That was practice. These small practices are not small. They are how you transform karma. Karma is built in moments like this. Every time you choose clarity over compulsion, you plant a different seed. Seeds become habits. Habits become character. Character becomes destiny. Now, there is another part of this story that matters. Relating also opens the door to compassion. Compassion does not mean excusing harm. Compassion means you refuse to poison your own mind while responding to harm. Compassion is the refusal to become what you hate. Jonah realized that constant political hatred was changing him. It was making him less patient with family, less gentle with strangers, less able to listen, less able to feel joy. So Jonah asked himself, do I want to win arguments, or do I want to live with a peaceful mind? That question does not make you passive. It makes you strategic. Because if you want to create change, you need a mind that can think clearly. Hatred clouds thinking. Panic makes you impulsive. Contempt makes you blind. A calm mind can see better. A calm mind can act better. A calm mind can be compassionate without being naive. Jonah began to understand why wisdom traditions emphasize inner practice, even when the world is messy. Not to escape the world, but to engage without losing the heart. He also began to notice a deeper lesson about leadership. A leader who is constantly craving applause becomes trapped. They cannot tell the truth because they fear losing the crowd. They become reactive. They become performative. They become addicted to attention. Jonah saw that and asked himself, where am I addicted to attention? Maybe not on a national stage, but on a small stage. In group chat, in social media, in relationships, in family arguments, in workplace dynamics. The same addiction can live anywhere. So Jonah practiced the opposite. He practiced being unseen without collapsing. He practiced doing kind things without announcing them. He practiced saying sorry without turning it into a performance. He practiced letting someone else be right without feeling erased. These are spiritual muscles. These are also the muscles of emotional maturity. Now we come to the part of the story that many people do not expect. As Jonah practiced relating without agreeing, he became less angry. And he also became more effective in his own life, because he stopped wasting energy on endless outrage cycles. That energy returned to him like a tide returning to shore. He used it to improve his health. He used it to deepen friendships. He used it to read and learn. He used it to volunteer locally. He used it to have real conversations instead of online battles. In other words, he moved from compulsive reaction to intentional action. That is the path. That is also what it means to choose yourself. Choosing yourself is choosing your own mind. Choosing yourself is choosing your own integrity. Choosing yourself is refusing to be controlled by the latest outrage wave. When you choose yourself in this way, your life becomes steadier. And a steady life tends to attract steadier opportunities and steadier people. Not because the universe is giving you gifts, but because you are no longer sabotaging yourself with constant mental chaos. Now let me share a relatable example, the kind that might hit close. Imagine you are watching a public figure get criticized. You feel a rush of satisfaction because you dislike them. Then a day later you get criticized at school or at work or online. Suddenly you feel hurt, angry, misunderstood. Your mind says, "Why are they doing this to me?" In that moment, relating can be medicine, because you see that every person, even the one you dislike, has a nervous system that reacts to threat. Again, relating does not mean excusing. It means understanding the mechanism so you stop being intoxicated by cruelty. Cruelty is addictive. It feels powerful, but it is a power that rots the heart. Compassion is also powerful. It takes more courage. It takes more practice, but it creates inner freedom. Jonah did not become perfect. He still had opinions. He still cared about outcomes. He still got triggered sometimes, but when he got triggered, he recognized it faster. He returned to breath faster. He apologized faster. He let go faster. Letting go is not weakness. Letting go is wisdom. Now I want to bring this home as a closing reflection. If a comedian can say, "I can relate," and you feel resistance, ask yourself gently why. Is it because relating feels like losing your moral identity? Is it because you fear becoming soft? Is it because you think compassion is weakness? Is it because you have been taught that the only way to be good is to hate the bad people? If so, I want you to consider a different possibility. Maybe the strongest thing you can do is see clearly. Maybe the bravest thing you can do is refuse dehumanization. Maybe the wisest thing you can do is protect what matters while keeping your heart clean. Because hatred does not only hurt the target, hatred reshapes the hater. And what you practice, you become. That is karma. If you practice contempt daily, your mind becomes a house filled with smoke. If you practice mindfulness daily, your mind becomes a house with open windows. If you practice compassion daily, your mind becomes a place where wisdom can live. So here is the invitation. The next time you see a public figure, a classmate, a friend, or anyone who triggers you, try this. Relate to the mechanism, not the harm, not the ideology, the mechanism. The desire to be seen, the fear of losing control, the attachment to being right, the craving for applause, the panic of criticism. Then take one breath and choose your response from wisdom instead of impulse. That is practice. That is awakening. That is choosing yourself. In the comments, I want you to share one moment when you realized you could relate to someone you did not like, and what that did to your mind. Did it soften you? Did it free you? Did it change how you respond? If you want more stories like this, where we take everyday clips and uncover the deeper lesson about wisdom, compassion, karma, and the path of practice, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay with us. Thank you for spending this time with me. See you in the next video.